he came back, and you might not know this, she's actually on her second tour of duty here. She couldn't stay away. So we're a great place to work. Neighbors serving neighbors, right?
All right, we ready to go? So Scott Miller, you guys know Scott Baker Tilly. He's coming. He's got all the data behind this. The primary purpose of this meeting tonight is to discuss an upcoming electric rate increase. I'll let Ed start here in a minute, give you the history and the background, when the last one was, some of the data behind that, and the data driving the increase for that, for this. So it's to be that background. Ed will go through that. Scott will come in. He'll go through the detail and talk about how we handle the data, how it's looked. There are a couple options to where Scott's going to talk about options. That's the decision point for tonight. There are a couple options. We need to select an option. That's what then we will bring to City Council to suggest to you, or to offer City Council as the rate increase occurs. And then beyond that, we'll talk about the timeline for it to occur. We're towards the end of it, so it's going to happen pretty quickly after this. But we'll talk about the timeline at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So Ed, if you want to give some history and some current data.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Our last rate increase was about 13 years ago in 2012, 2013 timeframe. I go over both years because it took a very long time to do the rate increase because we were under the IURC, or the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, and it was a very expensive process. There's a lot of back and forth, and municipalities don't have to be in the IURC. And I want to thank this City Council, because you may remember just a couple of years ago, you helped us get out. We were one of the last utilities in the IURC. And by making that, I don't think it was in the slideshow, but by helping us make that decision, we probably saved the ratepayers about $2 million, because that's about how much cost the developers had to pay for transformers that otherwise would have been on our existing ratepayers. So thank you for that. And it also makes us more agile. And part of the reason we haven't had a rate increase in 13 years is because it's so difficult to get one with that process. Now think you got the City Council, you guys have a budget you do every year. Imagine if your budget was fixed for 13 years. There'd be some big adjustments, right? So we get concerned when the adjustments take a long period of time, like years, because then it's a larger adjustment. The one in 2013 was relatively large compared to this one. I think you're going to hear news where it's not quite as large as that one when Scott brings the data. So what we're looking to do is adjust the rates. And the reason Scott from Baker Tilly is involved is we're doing something called a cost of service study. What we want to do with a cost study is make sure that our rates are appropriate based off of our costs. Because Lebanon Utilities, unlike, say, Duke Energy, we're not for profit. We don't answer to shareholders. We answer to you. Don't want the rates to be any higher on the ratepayers than they need to be. So the process is our capital needs and capital projects for the next 5 years get built into this plan. We have the Baker Tilly analyze it and come back and say what our cost of service is and what our rates need to be and make recommendations. So you'll hear that from Scott. It's been about 13 years since they've done that. And there's also things we need to modernize in the rates. You may be aware that, electricity's in the news a lot around here, around the world, because there's renewable energy. There's a lot of changes in the industry. And one big thing that's changed is electricity is more scarce than it used to be. And in the past, the electric rates, about any place you went, the more power you used, the less it cost. Well, we're looking to change our rate structure and change some things about our rates so that you don't get as big of a break for using more power, because power is scarce.
Aaron, there's another chair over here. Or Scott.
I'm just getting started. I'm not stealing your thunder.
No, please. That's right.
But we've been working with Scott a long time on this. We've had a finance committee on the board with Aaron Smith and Ann Patterson, and have reviewed a lot of our numbers. This is really hand it to these folks, because they've seen a lot more detailed version of what you're getting right now, and what you're getting is pretty detailed I'm not sure we would do something this detailed for the public City Council meeting, unless whatever you guys want. So we're going to have some recommendations here and take you through. This is more or less how the sausage is made. And some of the things on the table that Tim want us to make sure we hit on is have a lower rate increase if we borrow and bond. And that's sort of the way we're leaning, but we just want to show that to you, that because if you don't bond, it's going to be a higher rate increase, but it gives you more flexibility. And of course, borrowing is an interesting decision, and that's something we'll get into. And also, I don't think it's on the table today, but we would like to see what the city council thinks about more frequent, smaller rate increases, because if you do it every 13 years, there's going to be one number, but if you do
There is not consensus on the board for that.
there's not consensus on the board for that. Well, actually, when I say there's not consensus, Aaron's not for that, and a few others aren't for it. And
Not for what?
for having a rate increase every year. The idea was,
I think Aaron expresses some things that we would all see. There are different viewpoints, but moving forward, this is a discussion we're going to need to have as to how do we want to approach this. We want to approach it every 5 years, every 13 years, get standard increases occasionally, not do them. But that's a debate that is out there that could happen now because we are out of the IURC. It's a different flexibility. We talked about the flexibility. It may or may not happen, but it's potential.
And that's not really our main point. I agree with Aaron in that would be a topic for another day. What we're looking at for this rate increase is we're looking at the industrial rate increase being a little bit larger than, because we have it broken in the rate classes. That rate class being a little larger than some of the other rate classes rate increase, and we're looking at maybe, do we want to divide that over 2 years like we did with the recent, or actually some of you guys approved the water increase where it was a certain percentage one first year and the second year to reduce the shock. It'd still be the same amount, but just over time. That'd be the other main decision point, whether to do the industrial in 2 phases and whether to bond or not to bond, is I think did I cover about what you wanted to, sir?
Well, two things. In the 13 increase, it was driven strongly by the 69 kV loop that was put around the city. Very valuable right now. We are starting to stress that loop. That's why one of the reasons we're back here. Also, metering came into that. I'm forgetting one thing, Dave. What else was it?
Substation.
Substation. All right. So for this round, all right, the primary things driving what we need is that 69 kVA line will need to be upgraded in time. The primary reason right now is we need a new substation on the south side. We're out of power on the south side, and we've actually had to turn at least one business down because we can't supply enough power for them on the south side to be able to do that. And the third is we're going to continue to upgrade the meters that we have from a technology standpoint that helps make us more efficient and better with regards to delivery of service. Is that fair? Okay. And those are the primary capital needs that you're going to see that Scott's built into the case. So I think, Scott, we've led right up to you.
Any questions on that before we lead into the expert? Scott hates it when I call him an expert because that means he has the answer to every question, and nobody does.
Oh,
Actually, I
thanks.
learned how to say no. So
I don't. Obviously, you gave us a nice booklet here, and you said that you don't want to bring this big of a booklet into the council meeting, so to
I
speak.
don't think so. But yeah.
But is all of this going to be available to the public?
Yeah.
Everything
Everything
is discussed in the They'll have everything that we're going to be discussing and everything.
Everything.
And then obviously, that brings up a big concern to me. If you're telling me we're out of power on the south side of Lebanon, and is that because
let me put some bumpers on that. We have power right now, and
right, but we
when
can't.
we're out of power, if there was a very large subdivision that wants to come in, like let's say Waterford, let's say Waterford were ready to build today and ready to hook up today, we couldn't hook them up without having the substation first. But I hear, David, am I saying that about right? Thought I heard you.
I think it's the ability to deliver it. It's not that we're out of power. It's the infrastructure to deliver it to a large user.
Okay.
Is the distinction. I think it's important.
We may not be able to meet their timeline.
Why don't you guys move up instead of sitting way back there? And
You're going to talk anyway.
Don't be bashful. We don't want to have to yell across the room to you. So come up front up here where you can sit and talk.
You have to understand with utilities, electric, we have like 99.9% reliability, and that 0.1%, people still complain about it. The lights need to be on all the time. And also, when you're looking at a high demand season, you're looking at the people using like twice as much power as they do in a low demand season. So it drives one board member crazy that we look at one circuit and say it's 60% loaded, and and we say, well, we need more power here. We need more infrastructure here because it needs to be at 50% for that, 5 days out of the year when it's going to be needed. That's just the reality of how power works. We need to have it for the worst possible day for the peak demand. Did I characterize your?
I'm the crazy one.
He's not the crazy one. He just most expressive one.
So let's make this real simple. The electric system is distributed through circuits in the city. All right. If your load is more than 50%, you are in danger because if something happens on another circuit or that circuit drops, you don't have enough power to convert over based upon that. Am I simple enough in my explanation?
Yeah,
so when you
pretty
go above 50% utilization of a circuit, you're stressing. And you're potentially causing reliability issues within our system, and that's what we want to address.
Thank you. Sorry to keep you all waiting. The fates were against me today. Everything that could slow me down did, including traffic and a fight with our jumbo stapler that I lost. So some of you have clipped versions rather than stapled versions. So anyway, thanks for being here. What you have before you is the slide deck. I'm not going to even go through the whole slide deck. I think there's 20 some slides I'm going to go through. And then the back half just has some technical data. If you're really into a lot of technical data, I have a copy of the full report that backs all of this up if anybody wants one. So we can pass that out later if you're interested. The PowerPoint isn't stamped, but you'll notice the report still says draft. I want to stress this is still a draft. The board hasn't taken any official action. I was talking with David and Sandra yesterday about certain numbers and was tweaking numbers today. So we're more than in the ballpark. We're in the infield and getting real close, but we are still tweaking a few things. So don't get too hung up on any specific numbers in here, but these all should be pretty darn close to where we think this is going to end up. So I'm going to try to do my best not to repeat anything that you said since I didn't hear it all. But just as we go through the slide deck here on the first slide, it just kind of gives you a summary of what we're, and if I say we're, I'm going to presume the utility and the board. I'm going to try to avoid saying that, but if I do, that's what I mean. So what the utility is asking for is an additional increase in revenue of about $3.4 million per year. We're going to have going forward an annual revenue requirement. So what it takes to operate the system, take care of debt service, take care of replacements and improvements. That budget is going to be about $31.8 million going forward. As was mentioned earlier, the last rates were done back in 2012/2013. Our tariff from the IURC is actually dated September of 2012, and I don't remember exactly when rates went into place, but it would have been late 2012.
I think it was January.
Early 2013.
January 2013.
Yeah. So it has been a while, and this will be the first increase if we move forward with an increase that you all will adopt locally on the electric side. You've done that for water and wastewater for as long as I can remember. But on the electric, this will be the first one locally. As Ed was talking about, this isn't just an across-the-board increase like you've become accustomed to with water and wastewater, where we just figure out a percentage increase and apply that to everybody. This is actually looking at the individual customer classes that make up the electric utility and how they use the system and put demands on the system based on the type of load and power that they need from the utility to operate their business. So we've done a cost of service study. So in total, that $3.4 million represents about 11.8, 11.9% increase in revenues. But again, that's going to be spread differently by customer class as we look at those classes individually. So it's in here in very small print because that is not a number to really focus on, but everybody does kind of always ask, what is the percentage increase? It's about that 11.9, 12% increase in revenue that we need. Big driver, again, that we have in this study is capital, growing community. lots of infrastructure demands and needs. Also, it's getting to the point where we've got some major systems that need to be upgraded. So the AMI, we need some more substations, as you've heard, those sorts of things. So capital is a big component of this, as you'll see throughout. We've got a couple different ways that we propose to fund some of that capital. But that's going to be a big driver as we go through this. And different for electric than on water or wastewater, a huge portion of our operating expenses is the power that we purchase from the Indiana Municipal Power Agency, IMPA. Big percentage of our cost represents that purchase power.
80%.
Yeah, and then it's in here on one of the slides. We're able to adjust for the cost of that power on a quarterly basis. So the tracking factor that you've probably heard about causes the rates that are actually charged to customers to go up or down based on what's happening with the price that IMPA is charging us. So because we're able to adjust on a quarterly basis for a big component of that cost, a couple of things. It means we can go longer without a rate change, although it does get to a point like we are now where we have some capital needs and need to do an enlargement in rates. But it also insulates us somewhat from changes in the world and operating and that sort of thing. So good thing, and that will continue, has continued since we've opted out of the commission. That would continue going forward as well. We would presumably reset the base rates, and then going forward from whenever that base rate reset occurs, hopefully later this year, tracking factors then would pick up. There'd be some math that needs to be done, but tracking factors would pick up and continue to reflect that up or down change in the cost of power.
Those capital projects, that's part of this study, is the capital projects in the budget for this year and the 5 next years. Is that correct?
It is. We'll get to that here in a second. Yep. So next slide 3. You've got a really good electric utility. It's operated well. You're in relatively good shape financially, as far as I know, operationally. The reason that we're here is to keep the utility financially sound, to invest in the resiliency and the reliability that we've already talked about in terms of being able to continue to provide service to growth as it comes to town, and do so in a way that isn't going to negatively impact any of our existing customers and allow us to meet the time schedules for new development as it comes in, and being able to be proactive on that. And then also looking at how the rates are charged to customers and doing that on as fair a basis as we can, which is why we got back to this cost of service study, since it had been such a long time since we had looked at the rates and charges themselves and the base rates. And you've had a decent amount of large load growth since that last case in 2012, 2013. So on slide 4, it just kind of lays out this timeline. Pretty simple, really. Like I said, we had that the case really went for most of 2012, and I think it was, I don't know, I think we were using partial 2010, partial 2011 data at that time that was then used to calculate those new rates. So we're talking quite a long time ago. Since that point, we've had those quarterly tracking factors where the cost has gone up or down. And now here we are today with doing this study and updating all of you on kind of what we've found so far. Kind of talked about this already on slide 5. We do have our base rates. Those cover operating, debt service, replacements, all those sorts of things. And then the power cost adjustment, like I said, is that just that pass through from the cost from IMPA. On slide 6, and stop me if I'm going too quick, but a lot of this is somewhat repetitive. But I know you're not terribly, or you're not exposed to the electric side and the electric rate side of this very often. So just want to make sure some of these points hit home, but feel free to stop me with any questions you have. On slide 6, just a real quick snapshot of where we are financially. So, and this number is a little bit dated, but at the end of 2024, we had about $6.9 million in cash and investments. And if you look at the right-hand graph first, you can actually see that that balance had declined quite a bit over the time period from 2022 to 2023 and then 24. There were some improvements, capital expenditures that were needed then. So the cash balances dropped down to 6.9. We had at 2024, the one bond issue from 2013 still outstanding, about 6.6 million in principal still outstanding. You can see on the left-hand graph, though, the blue line there is operating revenue, yellow line is operating expense, and you kind of see they are still increasing, perhaps maybe even diverging a little bit. We caution you to not think that, well, why are we here talking about this if it looks like revenue is still going up and is still covering cost? With that tracking factor mechanism, there is a timing delay in how the cost, when the cost hits our financials and then when we get the revenue back from those customers. It's a 2-quarter, 6-month delay in how all that timing works out. So that's one piece of this. The other piece of this is it doesn't reflect the capital that we need to spend going forward. And we'll talk about that here in a second. This is just kind of as is, where is, which is great, but doesn't address any of the major reliability, resiliency issues that we have coming up that need to be taken care of.
Can I interject and
Yeah,
tell me
please.
I'm wrong, but I think 90 days is really benchmark what we want for cash on hand.
And you're at 80, yeah.
And we're at 80 in 2024. Sandra looks a little more than that.
And 90 days, I would argue, is maybe even still too low. I would want to see, especially from a financing perspective, since we're going to be looking at, spoiler alert here, we're going to be asking for a new financing. I would like to see that cash number higher than that, actually, closer to 100, 125 days. So
There's not total consensus on the board on that expert conclusion. Go ahead.
that's right. But it will, the amount of, the reason I say that is that the amount of cash that you have in terms of the day's cash on hand, so taking your total operating expenses, dividing it by 365, and dividing the cash, that number into the cash balances, the rating agencies that rate bond issues look at that number. That's a key metric for them. And the higher that number, obviously, the more security, financial security you have and the better rating that you get. So we can argue about where or disagree what the right number is, but it is a key metric that they look at. And we want to make sure that we're at least hitting their minimum thresholds as we go forward to try to.
80's not good, though.
80's too low, in my opinion. Too low.
I agree.
So
What'd you say it was today?
I don't know what it is today. But
yeah, this is
2024.
This
It's
is
like
into
80.
24.
Sandra, I could put Sandra on the spot and she could tell you exactly, but I don't want to do that. So.
I would have to go back and calculate it for today.
So Standard & Poor's or Moody's are the two agencies that we would likely look at to rate the bonds. They're independent rating agencies, do this for not only electric utilities, but your civil debt, water. We don't have any open market debt now. It's all SRF. Sorry, Sandra. But they look at, those two agencies look at the financing and are the ones that have kind of established their own metrics. And either agency is pretty close in terms of what they're looking at and what those metrics are. But that's who we're working with.
They want to see like around 100.
It's a sliding scale, and when you fit within a bracket, it translates, that one component translates to a rating on the bond. So whether you're at the very lowest investment grade, triple B, or if you're up at AAA, the highest. And so it's just a sliding spectrum within there. Higher you are, the closer you get to AAA. We'll never beat AAA as a municipal utility, but we should be able to get to but it's going to take more than 80 days.
We get better.
It reduces your borrowing cost. More questions about, I'm sorry?
No.
Okay. Any more questions about slide 6? Okay, slide 7 just as a breakdown of the revenue requirements. that we have. So purchase power, about just under $23 million out of the total 32.7. Other operating, so salaries, benefits, supplies, materials, all those kinds of things. Another 5.5 million. Debt service about 1.8. We've got a going forward capital need of 2.3 million, and then pilot that gets paid back to the city of about 190,000. So those are the components of what our revenues need to generate to be able to operate the system. Next slide is just a summary of the power cost that you incurred during the test year. So the first graph there is the amount of energy purchased from IMPA in megawatt hours. So 267,000 megawatt hours during that test year period. We had demand charges of about $11.4 million in addition to the energy. And like I said, that is the one of the biggest drivers of our rates is just that cost of power. Slide 9 just, again, kind of shows you comparison of kind of where we're at and where we need to get to. So about 28.5 million coming in currently under the existing rates. Need about 3.4 million to get us to the 31.8 that will take care of our requirement going forward. So next several slides then get into the capital need that we have. And I can already tell when we get into, so back to the question about the public having access to this. I agree with, as soon as I'm here presenting this, it becomes a public document. So it's if somebody were to request it, I think subject to council saying otherwise, I think we'd have to provide it. But this slide deck, as I said, the report is still draft. I can already tell just walking through this live for the first time, need to probably do some tweaks to the slide deck because we have a little bit of repetition here. So as we think about getting in front of council before a regular meeting, probably trim this down even more a little bit.
That's what I was getting at. Not that it's not public, it's just that it's so long that people might not, keep up with it. And we want to make sure we put the information right for the right audience.
Exactly. And we want to tell the story. We want to be able to tell the story of kind of, where we're at, or where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going, and do that in a clear, coherent way without a whole lot of extra detail that people probably don't care about. But if they want the detail, they're welcome to have it. So again, that's as we go through these slide decks, I'm just already thinking we're going to trim this up a little bit as we think about moving forward to a regular council meeting. But back on slide 10, as far as the capital improvements go, we've identified, as Aaron mentioned earlier, a 5-year capital plan. It's got about $20.6 million included in total in that capital plan. What we're proposing is that just a little under 10.5 of that, 10.5 million of that work get financed. And we'll talk about the specifics here in a minute. Gets financed through another bond issue, just like we did back in 2013. The remaining 11.4 then we would recover over a 5-year period through the rates and charges. And that would be about $2.3 million per year that we would build into the rates and charges. And so we would need to collect that money and then be able to go and do that work. And we've got some cash on hand right now, so we would start in on what we could, have revenues come in, and then just tackle the remainder of that pay-as-you-go capital plan as the money came in. The next slide kind of just shows you the components of that capital plan. So we talked about the substation. That's about $6.1 million. We have AMI metering right now, but it's a legacy system of metering, and newer versions do more, provide more data, more accurate. I think the version that we're looking at would allow customers some more functionality as well on their end. That's about $3.8 million. Some additional work needs to be done in terms of looping the transmission lines that we have. That's about 4.8 million.
KV 69, right?
Yeah.
We have a loop that goes around Lebanon, and some of we heard it, and some of it's very old, and we need to do some work on it.
That's a big concern too.
Yes.
Transformers, about 1.7. And just to clarify on this, I think we've changed the procedures and rules for the utility and implemented some new processes where as developers come in, if they require a transformer for their development, they're going to pay that infrastructure cost up front.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
He does agree on that one. But you see transformers here, $1.7 million. Well, we've got a whole bunch of existing transformers that will need to be changed out. Some of them already need to be changed out, and we're responsible for that. So it's replacement of existing transformers, not transformers from new development.
That's over 5 years.
That's a 5-year number. Yeah, it's an average, and
What's the average transformer cost today?
Depends on the size. I would need to refer back to
What's
it.
an average?
Quite a bit.
a lot.
We just purchased for a company coming in. Well, they purchased them and they were $100,000 each. So they were large transformers though. But a residential transformer is $3,000 to $5,000 depending on size.
Yeah, my little picture here, that trash can bucket looking thing, that's the residential transformer.
Yeah.
3 to 5.
Typically always try to keep on hand too, a duplicate transformer just in case one goes out. So if we buy a specialty transformer like we quoted, we'll also purchase a second to try and keep on hand as well.
So your big pad set, big transformers, yeah.
The lead times, I know. COVID, we had talked that the transformers were all on like back order and they were really hard to get. Is that still the case?
It's gotten a lot better, but it's not what it used to be before 2020, but it's gotten a lot better.
So-
At that time, it was like.
Tell me
60
if I'm wrong, David, for the substation, that we've already got quotes for that transformer and it's over a year still.
The larger they are, the longer the lead time.
That's one of the reasons we need the increase so we can get that purchase order and just get in line. Because if we order it now, it's the end of next summer before we see the transformer.
6.1 million is for all substations. That's not the new substation. That's all including addition.
That's for building a new
or whatever.
substation.
Building a new one.
That's a new one.
That's just the new substation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where are we at with substations as we talk about if we get over 50%, we're in trouble on being able to provide power? What are we doing on the existing?
This will help with
substations?
that.
All these substations are linked to that 69 kV line, so you can spread the load out, and this new substation will be able to shed some load off of those substations, put it on the new one. So yes.
With the loop now, we can balance power much better than if we were not looped. Move it from substation to substation, circuit to circuit. This just gives us more flexibility,
More
especially
resiliency.
on the south side.
Exactly. It gives you more resiliency to be able to handle and move power throughout the system as you need to.
Not every one of our circuits is over 50%.
And just so you know, we do transfer load from one substation to another weekly to every other week. So it's something that we do regular. As we do maintenance, if we're doing work on one substation, we transfer the load to another one. If we're doing work on a circuit or a specific line. So we need that capacity to transfer because after 50%, we will not be able to do it.
Something we're also implementing is regular substation testing. That's another thing that has kind of gone on the back burner for a little bit that we're re-implementing. So that's
Well, that
part of our
provided us a little
operations.
flexibility from the previous upgrade on the KV, right? Back 15 years ago, whatever it was. Yeah.
And with the AMI, one reason I'm glad it's time to do it anyway, because our system's getting obsolete. After 13 years, it's like a computer or any technology like that. But this improvement means the next time we look at our rates, we'll be able to look at more innovative rates like they do in other states, like time of use, which I was looking at that now, because what that would mean is that an industry that uses power during a peak time, we could charge them more for that time and less at night and help balance the load through the day. But with our current metering system, we can't capture all the information we need to do that. So with that, it's hopeful we can make it fair for people that can, you know. And we're not doing time of use, yeah, it would just be for commercial. Residential really can't do it. I mean.
It's a future topic.
Theoretically.
It's a future topic, but it would allow us flexibility for power users when they really go crazy to charge more, because it's actually the opposite now.
Yeah, it is. Right now, the
Right
more
now,
you
it's the
use, the less
opposite.
per unit you pay. Theoretically, you could do that, but it's not, from a residential perspective, it's not very practical.
It's not advantageous
No.
to do it for residential.
No.
You wouldn't,
No.
not really. Now, maybe if we had 80,000 customers, it would be, but we don't
Yeah.
have.
Everybody else does.
Well, and this is a topic David and Sandra and I were talking about yesterday as it relates to EV charging, because a lot of, there aren't a whole lot of examples of utility specific EV rates in Indiana yet. Most of them are just going through a commercial or an industrial rate, which is what you're doing right now through your industrial rate. Time of use rates is an ideal way, really, for to calculate an EV rate, but we can't do that yet because we only get, 18 to 21 hours or so of data per day. So it would be something we could look at in the future with the.
EVs are an interesting use case for laymen, because we've put in a very large transformer to provide a lot of power very quickly for a vehicle that may never show up or may show up just once in a while, and we have to have all the infrastructure there to serve it. So lots of times we make our money back on infrastructure so that it's not on the other ratepayers for the large infrastructure because they're using power. But we're putting in that large infrastructure, they're not using the power, so we want to make sure the rate supports that. So it's still working on getting the EV rates in this package, I think. So.
Slide 12.
We anticipate having an EV rate at the end of the day for this rate situation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. And I actually have a proposal on how we go about doing that. Yes.
This is a commercial EV rate, right?
Yes, it would. So right now you've got two. You've got a 17-bay Tesla supercharger station, and you've got a 5-bay out at the Pilot. 5-bay out at the Pilot, and then a couple more that have expressed interest in building new. So yeah, it's still relatively new in this area, although the Tesla one, I guess they say that it's one of their busiest ones in it's still kind of in its infancy, having rates, but this isn't the rate that somebody's going to pay when they drive up and connect their car. This is the rate that you're going to charge to Tesla and to Pilot for having the facilities there. Yeah.
Right now, as in terms of the number of customers, had interest from not only some large ones like Tesla, but individual apartment complexes want to add EV chargers, and they want their own metering point, so the customers have to pay for it themselves. This is just a good opportunity now to put this in a rate study and get it in there.
Slide 12. Again, I'll probably tweak this one a little bit going forward for the next time that you see this, but it kind of gets into how we propose to pay for the improvements, the capital plan. So out of that 20.6 million, what we're suggesting, or what we've built into this model, is that the substation and the AMI system, those two components, would be financed with the bond issue. So all total, once we add in the costs of the financing and the construction contingencies and things, we're looking at about $10,465,000 of a proposed bond issue that we would do to fund those projects. And then everything else, the 11.4, I think it was, 11.4 million would come through the rates and charges. The 11.4 is about $2.3 million per year over that 5-year period. And then the financing is about 1.6 Well, it actually would get us to a total debt service amount of 1.6 million per year. You've got, on your outstanding 2013 bonds, you pay about $850,000 per year right now in principal and interest payments. Those go through 2034. And then on the proposed bond issue, we would add about $800,000 per year and do a 20-year financing on that. So we'd have about 1.65 million in debt service per year. And then once those 2013 bonds are retired, debt service would drop back down to 2034 is the 2013 bonds. So that really is the discussion of the revenue requirements and what we need from a revenue perspective to operate the system. What we'll do now is just kind of pivot a little bit and talk about the cost of service study and how we take that information and spit out proposed rates on the backside of all of this. And do that in a way that doesn't have you going through the 55-page gory detail. So when we go through a study like this, first thing, what we just did, talk about the revenue requirements, how much money do we need? Then what we do is look at functionalizing all of those costs. So what costs are related to purchase power, what costs are related to distribution of the power, what costs are related to customer billing, and then administrative costs. So we go through, we functionalize all of those costs and look at different allocation factors to do that as we look at each individual line item on the general ledger and say, okay, this is purchase power, this is transmission, and so forth. Once we do that, we know how much we're spending to buy the power, how much we're spending to distribute it, how much we're spending to bill and operate the system. Then what we do is look at how much should each customer class contribute to collecting that total amount of revenue. And that's based on how much power do they use in total? What's their total demand? What's their peak demand? Do they have big spikes in their demand? And all those sorts of things. So we, again, look at all of that data, and we looked at 12 months of data, downloaded everything out of the billing system, went through, and when I say downloaded, what we did is download every customer each month, what was their bill, KW if applicable, KWH, customer charges, took all of that information, went through with just the billing determinants, so the KWH, the kilowatt hours, the kilowatts, number of bills, multiplied all that by your existing rates to make sure that when we come up with a revenue number, we can match it to what your billing system says so that we know we've got a good set of data that we're using at both sides match. And then we go through and we look at those allocations and how those customer classes impact the system and what is a fair way of splitting that cost. Once we've done that, then we design rates that are going to, as closely as possible, recover from each class the cost that has been allocated to them, best to make sure that it works. So that's what's laid out here on page 13. It's just kind of that overall process and a very big picture description of how all that works. The classes that we looked at, major classes here that we looked at in this study, of course, your residential customers, commercial customers, and in your case, we've got single-phase commercial and three-phase commercial. And your three-phase is kind of a legacy billing code from a long time ago. We've got a handful, three or four handfuls of customers on that code. We're going to propose to move them, do away with that and kind of continue them forward with the structure that they have. But anybody else coming on that has similar characteristics, we're just going to put into the small power category that you have right now and kind of do away with that legacy three-phase commercial rate. So coming out of this, we're going to have residential, single-phase commercial, a small power class, the industrial class, and then a couple additional ones here that you don't see on this slide. Street lighting, security and street lighting is another class, small revenues, But they're nonetheless. And then within industrial, I've got kind of a little mini class that's going to be the EV rates because they're currently being billed industrial rates. We're going to split out their amount of usage and design a rate just for those EV customers.
I think we're doing that to conform to what other communities are doing, right? Because some of the things we're glad to see that are changing. We're trying to be comparable to other benchmarks.
Yeah, this is kind of a cleanup of just what's happened over the past few years and kind of just making sure that we're as forward thinking in terms of how we go about this and structure things as possible. Next slide, slide 15. I kind of already have talked about this, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time. As I said, we've got two different ways of adjusting the rates across the board, cost of service. In this case, given the time, given some of the changes that we wanted to do throughout this process, cost of service just made a whole lot more sense and really is really the only methodology that we could have used to.
Allows each class to pay their fair share.
Exactly. That it really comes down to a fairness. What we have, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's worth noting that this isn't new for us.
Yeah.
2013 also.
Correct.
2012, so it's not new to us.
Yeah, it's very common that when electric utilities change their rates, it's more common than not, I'll say, that we do a cost of service study for an electric, whereas water and wastewater, not so much. Those are more often done across the board for 3 or 4 times, and then you do a cost of service study. So maybe every 15, 20 years you do a cost of service study on water, wastewater, whereas electric, usually more often. And what we have in this case is that as we went through and did the analysis, what the study shows us is that the industrial class isn't paying their fair share of the cost of operating the utility. The other classes are paying more than they should. So what we see coming out of the study is a shift in cost recovery to having a larger increase on the industrial customers and a smaller increase on the residential customers.
But it is fair share computed
It's based on their
information.
cost.
It's not arbitrarily
Yeah.
chosen.
Yeah, we didn't pull it out of the air, definitely. There's a lot of math that goes into this.
Yeah, not to steal Scott's thunder, but that's why we were looking at possibly doing the industrial rate increase over 2 phases because it's going to be a larger impact, whereas for the
But the flip side of that coin is that it is their fair share and they hadn't been paying it in the last 13 years. So perhaps they should accept all their fair share at once.
I think the way to think about it is.
Perhaps. That's to be decided.
I think the way to think about it is in 2013, when the rates were increased, we actually have these large industrial users pay less if they use more power. So that drops off. So instead of a flat rate for them, they've paid less over time. Now, many of those have moved in since then and they've helped push us and keep us out, but they've also not paid fully for the services they've had. Scott and the calculations are now balancing that and saying they're going to get more of an increase because they haven't paid as much as the other folks have.
Yeah, I think this was said at the very start. You have in residential, maybe it's all the classes but municipal. I forgot municipal. There is a municipal class, again, really small. I think it's every class but municipal and of course street lighting, which is just a flat rate. There is a declining structure. So the more kilowatt hours you use, the less per unit you pay. We're doing away with, well, the proposal is to do away with that. Every kilowatt hour charged at the same rate by class, each class will be different, but every kilowatt hour within a class charged at the same rate to better reflect what it actually costs. I mean, this is an expensive and valuable resource that providing to them and we need to recover that cost.
And you should not be rewarded with a lower rate by using more of a limited resource.
But that tends, and that's what's shown on page 16 here, that's what tends to drive up the biggest component of driving up the larger.
Page 16?
No, this one.
Next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This is really what drives that larger increase on the industrial is getting rid of that declining structure. So, for in the industrial class, we need about $3 million more per year, and they're 16, 17 million per year in revenue. For the residential class, we need about 400,000 more per year. Not in total, but
Is that something that we can look at?
well, let me keep going. Yeah, let me keep going. So what we see happen to get to cost of service, and this is still full cost of service before we talk about phasing rates. What we see on the industrial side is about a 20.6% increase to get to full cost of service, whereas residential is about 4.2% of an increase, and this is by class. And then commercial, for example, actually needs to have a bit of a decrease, about a 3.1% decrease.
In the last 13 years, the inflation rate has increased 44%. So I think this is a reflection of how well our staff has done managing our local electric utility, that for example, the residential rate would be so little of an increase, and the 19% compared to 44% is also indicative of.
And when you look at it in total, 44% increase since the last rate study in the consumer price index, we only need in total 11 or 12%. So, and a big component of that is back to the tracking factor. We're able to recover a big piece of that, but it is, keeping track of cost and operating efficiently and doing all those things. It all adds up.
The tracking factor has increased, by my calculation, less than 50% of the inflation. In other words, the tracking factor has increased about 25% in the last 13 years, whereas the regular inflation is 44%. So IMPA, I think, has been doing a good job of managing.
Totally agree. They've done a great job.
I could share a spreadsheet they do for us every year where they compare us to other like IOUs or independent utilities that are investor-owned utilities, IOU. And they, what happens is when they raise their rates, they have to pay, shareholders. Whereas if our rate increase were 0.1% too high, that would just mean that we, that went into our general fund. It doesn't come out to anyone. Next rate increase is a little bit lower. We want to be as accurate as possible, but for them, they get a rate increase and they pay a dividend.
Yeah,
our rates are always lower than theirs.
We don't have it in here in this slide deck. Probably, I hate that graph, but we'll probably add it anyway because everybody always asks. But comparing your rates to other utilities, you're in really good shape, and all of the IMPA customers are. They've done a fantastic job with their generation and doing what they need to do on their end to have that power available for all of the, what are we at now, 50 or 60 IMPA members? 61.
Yeah, and I should say, Scott and I talk about this a lot. A lot of community leaders want to see comps to other communities. Cost of service means you're building you're building your costs from the ground up, because you want to compare, and comparisons are good benchmarks, but you can't just go with it, because different communities have different characteristics. There might be a community that has where it's not as urban and they have a lot bigger footprint and they have more lines, and they might look more expensive than us, but be just as efficient, but their costs are higher. So we have some good reasons why our costs are lower with our smaller footprint. So we really need to work all the numbers through cost of service study.
So we'll talk about rate impact here in a second, but it was already mentioned. Actually, let me do this just to kind of find it. As far as the overall total impact, system-wide, like I said, total increase in revenue, 11.87%. The residential class is about a 4.23% increase. The municipal class, 5.5%. Again, that's super small. Commercial single phase is a decrease of about 3.1%. Small power is a decrease of about 2.54%. Industrial is an increase of 20.55%. And then security and streetlights is an increase of about 15.85%. I am somewhat reluctant to throw percentages out there because percentages of really small numbers can really influence things. So going, for example, municipal, that 5.5% increase is $9,700. The security and streetlights, that 15.85% increase is $25,000. So we're not talking about huge dollar amounts here. So keep that, take that with a grain of salt, but that's what we're talking about in total. But clearly 20.5% for industrial is large. Our test year normalized revenue for them, what they're paying right now is about $14.8 million. Cost of service for them is about $3 million more, so we need about $17.8 million. So that's not an insignificant increase. So there was a request to look at what happens if we try to phase in just the industrial. So give everybody else, move them, all the other classes, move them directly to full cost of service, but on the industrial, do it in either 2 phases or 3 phases. I don't even have the 3-phase option in here because that just doesn't work. Financially, it just doesn't bring in enough money for the utility. So we talked about it at a board meeting last week and I took it out. On slide 18, we do have the 2-phase option in here. It's not ideal because what happens is if we collect, what we're proposing to do here is we'd move industrial halfway to cost of service in phase 1 and then the other half in phase 2. Well, if we need $3 million more from them per year, we're going to get a 1.5 million of them this time and another 1.5 in phase 2. That 1.5 that we're giving up, if we do a phase in increase, gone forever in that year, that first year. And it means that we don't have enough money to take care of all the other capital items. All those things get delayed, pushed off, and the stuff that needs to be done really needs to get done and not delayed, if at all possible. But it is in here. So what it would mean, and again, this is just because of the way the math works, but it would be a phase 1 increase of about 10.3%, and then a phase 2 increase of about 9.3% for them on slide 18. Like I said, it's $1,522,000 additional in each phase. Slide 19, when we look at bill impacts, so this is a residential bill, that 4.23% increase. Most averages for residential customers, you typically see either 700 kilowatt hours or 1,000 kilowatt hours. This graph assumes 1,000 as the average, but we also show you 500 here and then 2,000. So that 1,000 kilowatt hour family, they're going to see about $3.77 increase on their monthly bill. So from a residential perspective, after whatever that math is, a number of years and 44% increase in CPI, we're asking them for less than $4 a month additional. So that's
one thing that's likely to come up from a political standpoint in this environment is whether this is any data center driven.
You're going to steal my thunder, Aaron, but go ahead.
Sit back,
Go ahead.
Aaron.
Flip forward
Aaron,
to page
sit back
22.
and relax. Sit back and relax.
We'll get
It's a good point.
we'll get there, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, flip forward to slide 22. We're
You don't have these suckers numbered. What does it look like?
yeah. Oh, it's microscopic in dark. That's so. It all looks
1.35.
Okay.
It looks much better on the
There you go,
screen. When you print it out, you can't see it. Both the color and the size.
I see it now.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's color and size. So and again, that's something else to work on. This is you're all the guinea pigs. This is a trial run. So slide 22. This has nothing to do with the data center, nothing at all. We don't serve them. They buy their power, get their power from somebody totally different than we do. It will undoubtedly come up, but every time.
It's two data center discussions. One of them is the Leap District. We don't serve the Leap District. That Meta is not ours. And the other is that when IMPA has to go to the regional providers to make up for some shortage, there will be some data center impact there, but it would be muted and considerably small impact.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, we wouldn't be able to say that there isn't data center cost in your rates right now. I mean, we've had data centers for a long, long time. These data centers that we're talking about now are different a little bit in terms of what they do. They're really more designed towards driving AI and the compute power that AI needs, but we've had data centers for years. So there is data center cost in here, but this has nothing to do with Leap or Meta or any other, specific data center.
Right now, IMPA does not have any data centers in its footprint.
Well, there's also federal legislation that's been introduced that's going to make data centers for future to have to come up with pay for their own costs of energy and water and so forth, as well as retroactive.
That's true. And along with that, I know IMPA, I don't know if they have any data centers in their footprint. Maybe I haven't checked lately, but I know that there was one looking to go into some local communities near us, and they were looking at data center rates built into the IMPA wholesale rate for things over 1 megawatt, where they recovered costs for everything that they had to do, similar to what we worked out for the water or wastewater side here, so growth pays for growth, and our existing ratepayers didn't have to fund it. So
Donaldson's introduced a bill in Congress. Now, I don't know who knows what will happen to it or where it'll go. But the intent is, and it's backed by the president, that we need to do this. I would hope that something would materialize from that. And that kind of takes this whole issue off the back of local providers.
Well, it's not on our back anyway. It's on our end.
Well, I know it, but that's just happens to be the way this one worked, okay?
Sure.
But it's still perception-wise from the public, it's like it's on your back.
So you have the easy answer when constituents talk to you. You have the easy answer
They get
that
our water and
says,
wastewater, but
we have nothing to do. It's Wabash Valley. It's not IMPA. It's Boone, REMC Power, whatever they are now, not Lebanon Utilities.
We got the answer. We got the answer. But there's people out there that will not pay attention to the answer we're giving.
They won't.
No matter what we say, it is not going to make a bit of difference.
I have a power blink from a squirrel, and somebody's on Facebook saying it's Meta. So
There's nothing you can do about that. I've tried to say it in every meeting that we've had. I've tried to bring that up.
But we can help establish the frame.
Let me ask you this quick. Where does the IMPA purchase their power from?
They have a variety of sources.
Own power plants, there are parts of them.
there's a regional organization called MISO and another one called PGM, which is and they actually bid on power by the hour.
So where they're purchasing power from?
Just part of it. They generate a lot.
Wait a minute, Aaron. Wait a
Okay.
minute.
Yeah.
So where they're purchasing power from to provide power to the IMPA customers, okay. If some of the sources that they're buying power from is some of the providers to trying to provide power to the different data centers across the country?
No, not individually. There's actually a network that a lot of the power providers buy into. And like Aaron was saying, they have a lot of their own power sources. They own part of 2 or 3 different power stations. They own solar generation. And then they buy parts of different plants, different places. And they have just a whole portfolio.
I'm just saying.
It's complicated, but
For
yeah.
us.
So
For us.
the purchased power from IMPA is very small. They generate their own power. They own portions of power plants. They typically only go to the market and buy off of the market if there's a shortage, and that is very rare.
Group. That doesn't convince Jeff back there, a local resident here who's against data centers. I'm just saying, that's the thing that we're gonna get.
Yes.
That's
Okay?
fine.
And you're exactly,
I mean,
that's the
that's-
thing that we're gonna get.
that's fine,
because
but-
I get that from a few people that, well, it doesn't make any difference, where we get our power from. Their power, they get it from somewhere else.
But they
and
don't.
Their power goes up and so.
But they don't.
EMPA does not, that's the.
Well, I'm just telling you
Yeah.
what, I'm just telling you,
I mean, we've been.
no matter what happens, we're gonna get this BS and that's gonna happen.
I can provide more information where I
Okay,
get their power.
I just want as
Worked
much
there for a while,
information
so-
as I can get to say, no, that's not right,
And frankly, even if you were to have a data center show up tomorrow, just like what we're doing for the EV rates and like what we've done for LEAP water and wastewater, if the data center itself is responsible for the cost of building the infrastructure needed to serve them, and then if we develop a rate that is specific to just them and that class of customer, which I would argue is potentially a different class, maybe it fits within your industrial rates. We design a rate that, again, doesn't impact anybody else, but makes them pay their fair cost. That, it's all about how you design the rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can do that,
Well,
you're
that's what I'm
better
saying.
than me.
That's what we pay you to do and whatever the rest of it's what I'm telling you.
Right.
That has to be
Seriously.
said every other sentence.
Right.
I mean, that's what it's all about.
You're right.
We can talk to the house companies, they don't believe we tell them anything. We're all liars, every one of us.
That's true.
Yeah, we're with you there, Keith.
Don't forget that I'm
Well,
part
that's
of a,
what they tell us.
don't forget I'm part of a foreign corporation taking over the
I'm just saying, that's, they're shooting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was said in a public meeting, so I'm not bashful about saying it.
No, we will hit that very hard, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you on the water wastewater side, some of the questions we get there are questions we've answered many times too. So
To the same, bring up that example when we're in front of the the public. Bring up that example that how the water didn't affect the civil, but they have a whole different rate, and
Yes.
that rate that they're doing is not even we don't handle it anyway, so this won't affect them. Use those a lot.
yeah, I like that idea. I just wonder if I'm going to bring out the people who are against the water wastewater too.
It needs to be stated though. It needs to be openly stated up front because the
They're already
questions are
there.
coming. Yeah,
It's a good comparison.
it is.
It is, yeah. Well, and that gets back to, again, like I said, you're kind of the guinea pigs for this presentation. We'll go back, we'll tweak this. If you all have any questions or things that we weren't answered today, we can do that. If you
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go
This
ahead.
is more for the group. Does anyone have a strong feeling one way or the other, besides Aaron has expressed himself already about the 1-phase or 2-phase industrial rate increase? Because we were just wanting to get some feedback on that.
Scott said something
Agreed.
about,
They've gotten off for 14 years with a lower rate than they. Oh, don't break it out into 2 phases for them. That's how I
It's the
feel.
old story of regulatory lag. When we had the commission that was making our decisions, and we've already talked about that this evening, what that costs. You never get whole because, the delay in terms of decision making, it's 2 years or whatever after the fact that you needed it. Phases do the same thing. You're going to lose what you needed. That whatever the amount was that we talked about. Now, it may be more popular and politically it may be more palatable, but when you really look at what we're here for, it doesn't solve the problem.
Scott said it was going to be $1.5 million that you never get back.
And we need the capital now. I mean, it's
Right.
been 14 years, right? And we need the
They don't
capital
phase
now.
it in.
I would too.
Another point here is, I talked with the mayor about the level of the industrial increase. And he does a lot of negotiating for the city directly. And he wasn't put off by that at all. So that's just another factor.
It wasn't what?
Put off by the size of the increase.
Well,
He didn't think that would impact his economic development, our economic development
Well, once
situation.
upon a time, we had no availability fees here. This is, availability fees was a historic approach to what we're talking about here. When these folks come to town, they need to pay for what it is that
We give away too much
doing.
already.
I mean, you just can't give it away, give it away, give it away. So that was a hard sell to even get availability fee.
So, yeah, full transparency here. I'm the person that brought up the phased approach for really one reason. When you look at our top 10 customers for power, number 3 and number 4 are your school system and the hospital. I agree, but the hospital and the schools are considered large industrial, so they're going to get hit with this, and they tend to focus. They're not a for-profit well, neither one is a for-profit. But the schools right now are installing solar all over the school corporation, so their costs are going to come down an awful lot. And with them, it doesn't bother me, but I thought we should have it as a relevant discussion point because of that.
Yeah, I'd like looking at the phases and bringing it to city council because I don't think you're going to hear a lot from the public about a 3% rate increase, but you may hear from some of our top 20 customers. And we really care a lot about our top 20 customers because it's about 33% of our revenue is our top 20 customers. And you can look at communities like Anderson, I think it was GM, you were from it. When they left, it really depressed the area, depressed their system. I don't think anyone's looking to leave, and I think our rates are small enough that people aren't going to run off. But we want to do the best we can for our industrial customers. And one thing I would say, and I'll probably lean on David and Sam for details on this, but a lot of our big industrial customers, there's things they could do right now to reduce their power by as much as 20%. But the power is so cheap, they haven't made the investment to do it. And it's things that's driving up our costs. So that this might incentivize them.
Prior to the increase, you're going to communicate to those people.
Right.
They already have. It's
Right. Again, we've got the whole discussion about the CPI, right? We're raising, we're going to raise 20%, but it's been 13 years and CPI has gone up double that, right? And for the last 13 years, well, since you moved in, some of our big businesses have come here even since our last rate increase. And since then, based upon our calculations, the concept of fair share, you guys have been getting a pretty good bargain for what you've done. So we've got a strong argument.
Even with the 20% increase, we're still not even in the top 10 of the amount of rates that's around here. We've all become rate seekers. We all look around now to see what other companies are charging, and we're not even in the top 10 in the central Indiana, even with the 20% increase.
Yeah.
I think this is just bringing it to a fair is all it's doing.
I can provide info. I got some info if that's helpful. But no, I just think when we go to the big meeting, it's probably, the regular meeting, it would be better to have decided this because it's hard to communicate choices to them. We want to give them a choice, I think. And also you guys are okay with the bond approach or?
Out of all the rate increases that we've had brought before the council, I've never seen any big rate payers at any meeting. I really would not worry about it.
Okay.
They're not going to be here.
Try to be conscientious. That's all.
Well, they're not.
Answer your question, yes, I'm okay with the bond.
There's two ways. We can go with bond or without bond. Everybody needs to understand that, so.
Without the bond, the rates are much higher, the increases.
And also
Federal bond.
the capital projects that we need will be delayed if we don't get the bond issued. The substation's the big one.
Yeah.
But you have a bond.
Yeah, and to me, I think that makes a lot of sense because in 34, we're going to rotate off the current bond, and that's going to be an $850,000 addition to our budget that occurs 8 years from now. Whether we need another rate increase before then or not, we don't know, but that positive thing for us in 2034.
That timing works out real well. It gives you time to convince them.
This rate increase you've got, is that projected a little far? Not just right here and now?
Doesn't kind of legislation, everything tell us we've got to do the final?
Yeah, so as we've gone through this, we've done a number of different iterations like you heard. And so we've gradually been adjusting pieces of this. So this now reflects, we started with a test year that was the 12 months ended October of 2025 as kind of the base test year. This study has the most current power cost that we have and is going forward from there, and the tracker will pick up the power. So it does look forward. It's hard to say how far, we've got 5 years on the capital. The O&M that 5.5 million of other O&M is really kind of the part. Kind of sad, but we feel like, especially with some additional customer growth, we should be in good shape.
14 years ago, right, that we had this approved and the city's grown and we've been able to increase the base and that has helped us all and get us to this point where, gee, we're going to ask for 4% now from our
I
residents.
think that's the biggest thing is how we grow.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't grow, it's just going to skyrocket.
I think Matt said in a meeting, the mayor said in a meeting a couple months ago that when he first started his first year, there was only 1 or 2 building permits pulled, and to year to date this year there's about 400. So we are growing very fast.
You don't have a slide for this, but and we've just been talking about it, but can you say something about the streetlights? Because I know there's a lot of interest in that. The city's doing a project and just wanted to get a waypoint there.
Yeah, so as far as open items, the EV rate and streetlights were kind of the two things I was tweaking today. On the streetlights, we have, the existing ordinance has a whole list of different types of bulbs from way back. So different wattages of mercury vapor bulbs, different wattages of high pressure sodium bulbs, and LEDs. Everything that we install now new is 142 watt LED. So it's all the same bulb for the most part. So what we're going to do or propose to do is clean all that up. And what I was tinkering with today was ending up with four different classes of rate for streets. Have one rate for city street lighting. We'd have one rate for private security lighting. We'd have one rate for the pole rental that goes along with private security lighting because they pay for the bulb plus the pole. Lighting that we provide in Ulen. There, we don't own the bulbs, we don't maintain them, but we provide them the power to operate the lights, so their rate would be less. The pole rate is fairly minor, $1.75, I think, per month. Private security lights would be a little higher than the city street lights because it's get to and deal with the private security lights because they're on private property and we got to deal with. So
The resident pays for the resident or the buyer pays for that.
For security lights, the resident pays for it. Yeah, it's in their monthly bill.
Yeah. So we would come up with four rates, and that's kind of what we're working on.
On the alleys and stuff.
I mean, if there's a light on it, if it's a public light, it would.
So the city pays for a lot of those also, but residents have requested lights and then we bill them. We always recommend that they start with the city. If they want to add a light, they can to it. If not, then the resident can pay. It's which way does the light face? We turn it toward their home if they're paying for it. If the city's paid for it, we turn it to the road or the alley.
Just to give you an idea, the city right now has 1,121 bulbs that it's paying for city street lighting. And then we've got 708 bulbs for private security lighting, 242 poles associated with that. Well, 242 poles that are being paid for. And then Ulen has 30 lights, 30 bulbs. So that's trying to get to a point of kind of what that cost looks like. From a class perspective, the whole class, all of those bulbs together was about 156,000 collected in our test year. Actual cost of providing that service is about 181,000. So that's back to that $25,000 or 15.85% increase. So we know that the mayor's got the light study going on the LED lights, and and trying to, well, I don't know exactly. That study is ongoing. What we're trying to do here is we know what we collected, having gone through the cost of service and looking at all of the different components, we know that to provide lighting is $181,000, and now it's just a matter of how do we divvy that up between those 4 different buckets to collect $181,000.
Coordinating that light study with utilities together or what? Or are we just shooting at our own?
Yeah,
We asked that
we've talked
in
to
our
them several
meeting.
times.
Dick. I specifically asked that in our meeting, and Kevin said that he had spoke with the utility.
You're supposed to get something on it, because I asked again last week, August. Study.
One of the things that they've been waiting on is our rate study, because they knew the lights, they were going up or down depending on. And so they've been waiting on us to make decisions so they can give you guys a proposal. I don't remember the exact cost. We've given them estimates based on the cost of service, but it was just estimates. So they were waiting on us to finish our before moving forward.
I hope that they're using the lights that the utilities maintains.
So yeah, moving forward, all city lighting will be ours and the same, yes.
We've been trying to get that for years.
They did some where they put their own meters in and then they were paying meter costs. And it's really not beneficial to do that. It ends up costing more money per light when they do it that way. So when we all had a meeting, Kevin was in there. I forget the company's name that you guys, they hired. They were in there and it was just determined then all lighting is not going to be meters, it's going to be flat rate. So.
That's all that I had. I think next steps would be, as you think about it, if there are other questions that you didn't get answered today.
As a citizen, I'm really happy to see so many city council members here, because sometimes we have working sessions and only 1 or 2 will show up. And I'm really pleased that you folks did give this some.
Never really asked us any questions or anything.
So I think we need to talk a little bit about timing to where you guys can anticipate what's coming at you, and we need to anticipate making decisions also.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think I heard what I needed to know on some open items that are to final report, and then it would be presented final report. Board would.
And that date is?
Jeff, what do you think it takes to write up an ordinance?
Yeah, so we were talking about that earlier. There's going to be some, my preference would be to go ahead and just do rather than piecemeal it and say, hey, we're replacing. Trying to do that more and more. I've been guilty of it in the past when needed. So started on some of that in the past couple weeks.
Once we get approval of this, how long would it have for us to have?
Yeah.
So we're here, this is essentially all. Really, by the time we get through, because we'll need at least, minimum 2 meetings at council, we need, definitely a meeting for the board to study, and then the board would pass a resolution recommending approval to the council. Council would then public hearing and potentially adopt work on a bond ordinance simultaneously and double those up as we go through that process. But given all of that, I don't see how we're by the time.
Talking about a city council public hearing.
Council public
Yeah,
hearing.
there would be public comment,
Right.
of course,
Right.
during our process, but you're talking about a formal.
Yeah, we're required to have a public hearing, just like, so the process would work just like water and sewer now. You'd have. Doesn't sound. And at that point, I think from my perspective, I would recommend, since it's not, things aren't falling down, what I would recommend is that we plan to get into the market. As what we see as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving and then beyond, just because of supply and demand, interest rates will start to creep up. Buyers get their books filled for the year and I wouldn't, unless you feel like it's super critical and we need another 2 or 3 months, I would. If we're
I'd
at
like to
it.
see all the approvals done this year.
Yeah,
and then-
yeah,
then have-
yeah, well,
because I
yeah,
wanna avoid the-
totally that. Get the rates approved, get the bond ordinance approved, and we can be working through the steps there because we're gonna have to go to the rating agencies. That takes time. So we can be working through all of that.
Sandra, when will you be comfortable allowing?
Yeah, that's the other thing. So
This is foreshadowing a little bit to our next board meeting. We're changing the process of how we're going about and building the substation a little bit.
It's up to the board to change it. We're gonna talk about
If you would like, we'll have some working session time to discuss the process of how we can change it. It helps us a little bit on our end, especially with the payment of the substation transformer. Yeah. Yep.
It'll be
Yeah,
more
they're-
nimble that way.
the transformer, they were wanting 30% upfront to order it.
30% once it's shipped, and then the rest. Let's see.
A recommendation, but I just don't want to say we're doing it
Correct.
until.
Yeah. We would like to.
And that's the thing, obviously a rewrite of the ordinance is going to take that amount of time, whatever it takes. But could we cram through rates and a bond yet this year? Yes, but in the environment that we're in, I would suggest we just do a methodical process, keep working through it. And if that gets us to issuing early next year.
Maybe have an
so be it.
effective date of 1/1?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
So if everybody wants to move more quickly than that, we can certainly truncate our process down to 3 or 4 weeks.
From the billing system standpoint, though, Dave, how much time will you need?
Once it's approved, I think the girls really, I mean, they
Essentially, like on street lighting, we would just be getting rid of it all but one for each.
yeah, we would just take it down to the one. So I don't think from a billing standpoint, we would need that much time.
Power, and then the EV charger, those would be the only special rates.
And my suggestion for that will be pretty simple. So that shouldn't be a problem from a programming perspective.
Fourth quarter, be requesting some agenda time, it sounds like, for the council.
Rates will go into effect in January.
Everything smoothly moving, yes.
January.
And see what the
Yeah, I can be ready
bond
to
rates
before
are
then,
gonna
but I
be.
think it's really the bond process that gets us
Right.
into that.
It is.
But yeah, we'll be ready to go. We will.
Yeah.
I was hoping for September 1st, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. And then the bond bridge, you work on that afterwards.
September 1st is,
I know.
that would be a challenge.
Would be a challenge. Well, you're looking at.
First meeting in September is about 6 weeks out. That'd be a little bit dependent on you then for that. The second,
It's got to be finished in a couple of weeks. Oh, you will?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I said, we're in the infield now. We are super close. We're rounding third at this point.
If we can, let me roll your sleeves on the ordinance and let me see what we can do.
Well, maybe before 1/1.
And here, you all will know better about this than me, but we can always do a special meeting too for a public hearing if we wanted to do something sooner. That has pros and cons with it. But I mean, there are ways, but
I think the sooner is better. Decide to do this, it needs to just move it.
also right in the midst right now of getting ready to take forward phase water that's going to start up that I don't know how much we'll hear. Plus $1 million of construction, they're going to go on all over, and there's going to be some land acquisition and there. I don't know.
and council meets twice a month, right? So that really,
Second and fourth.
yeah, special meeting really probably doesn't matter since we're every 2 weeks anyway.
Thank you, everybody.
We're adjourned. Thanks for the time. Thanks for creating the time.
But you it's always a Wednesday after the Board of Works meeting, right?
No, we started, I just.
Working session 4.